Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Best day of the week.
We're all back.
We're all
Happy
back.
Monday.
It feels like it's been a month or two before we've all been here together again.
I know.
know.
I've missed the trio being together. I was so bummed that I missed Nico's interview. I was really looking forward to that, but you guys did a great job. So
What a guy.
He came prepared. He was like, I know your other co-host, she's got properties in Miami and New Orleans, and he was all excited. And yeah, no, it's a good guy though. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a good episode.
panels had a busy VRMA.
Yes, which will be the highlight of today's episode for all of our live viewers and listeners. We are going to be covering pretty much the big takeaways. Unfortunately, Michael Golden wasn't there. But
That's why
you
I
know,
look so refreshed today.
I was
Everyone
gonna
in the
say,
industry is feeling rough, but I feel great.
yes.
I was like very, very close to losing my voice. Like it was on Wednesday and Thursday. I was like, it might go. You're just like scream talking at people for 3 days.
everywhere. The vendor hall to the bar lobby and
Mhm.
everything in between. Yep. It was.
Was it in fact the biggest one you guys have been to?
I would say so for me.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, yeah, I guess it was. I guess it was a pretty big show. And what I thought was interesting was like each of the session times had 10 sessions in them. And at first I saw that and I was like, there's going to be no one in this room. And then they're all packed. So, yeah, which was a great sign, especially after the spring one, which was like, it was like
Yeah.
me, 2 other property managers and like 500 vendors. So
Yeah.
this was great to see a better turnout.
Especially
Well-
compared to San Antonio. I think that's like the first one I went to and I met you guys in person. San Antonio, I feel like you could walk into the room and everyone's like, hey, how you doing? Oh, like we all knew each other. It wasn't like not a strange face in the room versus this year. It was, whoa, okay, there's a lot of new faces, a lot of new vendors, a lot of new property managers, but there's also some out of the industry folk that were roaming around. So it was interesting to see the whole dynamic.
I obviously wasn't there this year, but every year, the past 10 years since my first one in 2014, it seems like it's gotten a little younger, a little younger, a little younger, a little younger.
Yeah.
Is it definitely that way?
Yeah, for sure. I think I know when I first started going to just these general industry events, I was like, well, granted, I was like 23, but I was like, I'm the youngest person here by like many generations. And that is like, and you also just see a mix, I think, of just in general, it's becoming more diverse, more types of companies, other types of operators. Like it's not just so much like the old guard who are still very important, but the lines are blurring.
Yeah, my very first one, I think, was in Orlando, and there were more people with walkers than there were people in their 20s. I'm not kidding at all. Not even joking. But now that certainly has changed, and it's cool to see. One of the questions I have for you guys, one of my favorite things to do when I first get to VRMA is walk all the vendor booths and see how many new PMSs, how many new automated locks companies there are. It seems to be those two categories especially are the most the most frequent to pop up and then disappear a year or two later. But before we get into that, got a cool announcement courtesy of our friends over there at Sojo. Sojo is we did a contest where they were hosting a happy hour, and Upstay, Andrew Linjosic, congratulations, you guys have won. So reach out to us or Sojo, and we'll get a happy hour put together.
Awesome.
Yes,
Yeah, congrats.
your housekeeping team certainly earns it.
For sure. Love it. So your question, Michael, to us on the vendor side, like how many new
side.
Okay.
What was the most common kind of new company this year?
Brandy, you go first. I think we'll
Oh,
have the same
wow.
answer.
Oh, well, I mean, just there's so many different like AI companies coming on, like trying to wiggle their way into the space in some manner. But I wanted to touch on your previous your comment on either there being new PMSs or new locks companies. And I definitely saw a bunch of lock companies, and I think that they're not necessarily new, but they might be newer to the American market. There are some European companies, so I think that
Okay.
that's also what we're going to be seeing is like it's not just the American or North American vendors. Your people are trying to cross over.
Yeah. I'll agree to that. Except for shout out to Sam Dundis from Bestie AI, who was the best AI vendor on the floor, even though they didn't have a booth. But also, while we're talking about this stuff, shout out to Mark Simpson from Boostly, who's tuning into the live. Jeremy Weiss, thanks for the comments on our live streams, and you always tune into our hotel crew and to us as well. So we appreciate you. And what up, Tiffany? Long time no see. So just want to get shout outs to our live viewers. But yeah, I'll agree. There was a couple new PMS companies that I saw, but more like the approach of, hey, let's not get a booth. Let's just walk the floor and connect with vendor or not vendors, but operators and see like, where do we fit in the mix? And, they're kind of playing more incognito. But that was pretty much it. I would say maybe there's a couple, maybe too many guest like facing apps, like all the we're gonna be
Agreed.
your yeah, that was the one I saw the most where it's like, oof, okay, really saturated market here with the guest communications piece. And there's gonna be we all know, like for any category of our tech in our industry, there's going to be a dominant player, and so it's going to be interesting to see, who those top two or three are in a year or two, because I think it won't be this many companies, continuing in the future.
Yeah, I think what's also interesting is you're seeing a lot of these companies blend together, right? So there's, companies are now doing not only your guest communication, but your locks and your ops management, and they're all kind of blending together, but some of them are missing one component. Like they all have
Mhm.
something in common, but are missing one piece here or there. And I think that we'll just continue to see like that consolidation,
Yep.
as we go forward.
Agreed. I think
Yeah.
long term there's going to be kind of two logins. There's your front of office and back of office logins. You have your
Hmm.
PMS with pricing and accounting and all of that. Then you'd have your locks, automation, guest app, those types of things on the other side. So I do that trend certainly continues to happen. I think we'll see more and more of it. We've talked a lot on this show about the consolidation on the vendor side, and it's only set to continue to consolidate as we have not a ton of VC funding flowing into the space. So your opportunistic larger companies are going to continue to peel off, purchase the smaller companies that might be kind of running out of capital. So, but at the end of the day, it's a good thing for operators because I know, Brandy, you hate having 15 logins.
I know. I was actually thinking about that this morning as I was logging into a lot of our different platforms. I was like, and then, like you're keeping track. I mean, this is just like simple administrative stuff, but you're keeping track of everything through like LastPass or whatever. And it's like some of these things all have the component, like, again, this like everybody's kind of overlapping in certain areas, but not enough for you to get rid of one of them. And it was interesting. I was talking with some vendors that were coming up to me, and then also some people that reached out to me on LinkedIn afterwards about some of the products that we use at Romy. And, since we started using some of these products, all of those vendors have maybe added features. And so what I was telling the vendors I was talking to is like, or the operators I was talking to is like, the reason what we singularly use like a product for, you might not need the whole stack of products that we're using because maybe you just need two or three because they now do everything. But for us to like go and get rid of one of those products, we wouldn't do that now because we have all these systems built out, and maybe we want something like very specific that they offer. But I think it's a win for the operators because you can kind of get more out of the one service that you're paying for.
Yeah, I think it the vendors need to do a really good job of having actually deep integrations, not just surface level integrations,
Yeah.
because surface level integration still doesn't really do you much good. It might pull a little bit of data, but it doesn't kind of eliminate the need to log into XYZ platform every day. So if you're listening and you're a major vendor, don't take the shortcut and just have as many integrations as possible. a, have a number of very deep, meaningful integrations, because that's the direction the industry's going.
Definitely.
Well, kind of in that same vein, you can't go to a conference these days without saying AI. So there, we've said it on the podcast for today. But I think that's where there's real fun opportunities, is on like in the vendor space, of really using that technology to take the operations up a notch and really start to simplify things more. So, you know, there was a lot of discussion about AI from like an operator perspective and how you can be using that. But I think that the real change is going to be coming from the vendors and how they can, use AI to make our operations a bit smoother.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's probably a fool's errand to, as an operator, to try and figure out AI on your own. Let the vendors figure it out.
Well, I was gonna say Brandy, we had a good chat with Jeremy Gall from Breezeway at their booth, and we got to do quite a few interviews throughout the conference. And I don't think there was even a happy hour that I can go to that I didn't hear someone on my right side or my left side really talking about AI, right? Like there was like, oh, how are you guys using ChatGPT, or this, like just simple little things, right? Where it's not like they're building out their own machine learning engine and all this other stuff. But from the conversations there, I think the big takeaway though too is, yes, AI is a big buzzword, and shout out to Evan Dalgo, who's always kind of on that forefront of AI and preaching from the mountaintops there. But that discussion that we had with Jeremy, Robin Cragen was on the panel, and it's like, yeah, like AI is great, but a lot of us as operators don't even know how to do like the proper operation things fully while offering hospitality. And I think my big takeaway was, a lot of us in today's world, like whether it's an Apple product or you buy something, you buy a piece of tech, whether it's AirPods or I don't know, you could buy anything, right? And it's advertised a specific way, and then you go to do it. You're like, oh, I love this feature. That sounds great. I'm going to use it. And it doesn't work, right? It's not as advertised. And a lot of vacation rental managers, I think maybe back in the day, it was all about unit count and inventory and all this other stuff. But now it's actually about like being as advertised. And to Robin's point, we shouldn't be focusing on AI until we actually nail that stuff down first. So I think it's like a give and a take type deal, where it's like, be as advertised. If you're like, and again, there's a lot of moving parts, just like there's a lot of moving parts of building a tech product. But I think, yeah, AI is great, but we need to focus at the core first and make sure that's actually being consistent before AI is fully unraveled into the tech stack.
Yeah, there's a commoditization that's kind of happened on short-term rentals, the mainstream effect, and we'll get into all the different various channels here in a minute. But when the product is pretty much mainstream, then you actually have to differentiate. There's no longer like, oh, I'm one of 3 operators in my market, people have to stay with us.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're not one of 3 operators in your market. There's probably 100 in your market. So what's actually going to differentiate you, not only to sign up more homeowners, but also to compete for guests? You have to have actual differentiation. And I would encourage you to either lean heavy on the technical AI side, or lean heavy on the in-person, like personal hospitality side. I don't think you can ride the fence very well, because that message might be a little confusing to guests.
Yeah, it was. So one of the panels I was on was about fixing your listing, and we just like kind of brutally went through someone's listing who has like almost a 5-star rating, so they are doing a great job. We just got like very nitpicky. But afterwards, a woman came up to me and she said that she's in a kind of like a coastal Florida market, and she showed me the page of, if you go and look at any homes in her market, and it's all just this sea of blue. It's all just pools. And she's like, and all the pools kind of look the same, because there's only so many ways you can do a pool. And she was like, we were kind of brainstorming ways that she can differentiate her listing. And I think that's, people are starting to see that, that it's difficult, that there aren't like a lot of levers that you have to pull, but people are starting to get creative, really put more like stock into, okay, having really great photography, maybe trying to tell a story that, is the same throughout your listing and your website and your socials if you have them. So where that might not have been at the forefront of people's minds, I think that is definitely, they're coming to the realization that it is really important, like how you advertise, obviously, on all these sites.
Yep, being as advertised, super important.
Mhm.
I think another one too, Brandy, and you always talk about this, but I think I'm hearing it more, especially walking through like the vendor hall and talking to other operators. And my favorite kind of question to ask vendors is like they're always asking me, and Brandy, probably you too, and Michael, you too, like, what are you guys hearing out there? Like, right, like with the podcast, you probably hear so many things. And my question turned back around to them is like, what are you hearing from your customers? Like, you have a pulse on operators of many different sizes, many different destinations. I would love to know their actual, pain points or the conversations y'all are having with them. And the number one I'm hearing more and more is profitability, sustainability, and not just sustainability and like eco-friendly sustainability, but like business sustainability, like making sure your
Existing.
books existing,
Surviving. Yeah.
and Michael, I think I actually sent this to both of you, but there's a quote from Jason Calacanis on This Week in Startups and All In podcast, basically like his success to podcasting, right, was to outlast all the other podcasts, right? Like that's all you have to do is just outlast the other, the other people in the market. And I think, it kind of comes true, like in business, in our industry or any industry, like you just have to stay in business. It's not about starting a business and raising funding and being all flashy and cool. It's about like actually being here in the long run. So
And
hearing that conversation.
a big part of that's passion too. You see people kind of drop in the Domios of the world because I can make a quick buck and this is a massive market, and then they're gone, right?
Yeah.
In and
Yep.
out, raised a ton of money, burnt a ton of money, gone. Versus the
Yeah.
people who are wanting, they love this industry, they want to be in it. They'll do whatever it takes to survive and advance, stick around another year. And I think people can see through that pretty quickly too. Generally speaking, it's very much a relationship driven industry. I know we all kind of advise various companies, and that's one of the first things when somebody's new to the space. It's guys, you can't just kind of hire a sales team of 100 people and burn through leads. Like it's just very much a relationship.
You can,
driven.
but
You're not going to survive. Yeah.
Yeah. You won't be around next year.
That was one of the other panels was about fundraising, and it was interesting. All of us had kind of like different paths through fundraising, but I mean, it's kind of it's a tough time out there in the fundraising world. But we were talking about like there's all sorts of different avenues that you can take to achieve your business goals. But I do think now people are maybe a little bit more conservative or maybe a little bit more grounded in their approach to their business. Like it's not necessarily about getting the most amount of money possible. It's like, what money do I need to achieve this objective in the next 2 to 3 years? And really being, I think, a bit more pragmatic about it, which I think is great. You're not just like trying to get as much money as possible and then you have to spend it immediately on maybe make some bad decisions. So yeah, I think people just now have to be a bit more creative, and it was interesting. Almost everyone is feeling the ADR pain in one way or another, and that was just like an interesting thread. I mean, it's not a hot take or anything, but the profitability, really focusing on what are the essentials that you need for your business, and that was, if there's one thing for the vendors to take away, like, is your business absolutely key for the functioning of your partners? Because when it comes time to look at the P&L and what you can live without, you want to be in the keep column. And so I think that's going to be a little interesting to see how that shakes out, because I mean, I know that we can be pretty brutal when we go down through our financials, and we're certainly not the only ones who are taking a look at every single thing that we're spending money on and making sure that it's actually adding value.
I do love Brooke Foss from Vintori, his posts on the My Tech Stack, because there is a question or a part in that where it's like, what's one piece of tech that you could not remove? And to see those answers, whether it's people are struggling with ADR issues or compression, down to maybe an economic downturn, like even if the worst of the worst happens, I can't remove this piece. Usually it
Slack.
involves yeah, it's,
I'm just
it's
kidding.
insane. It usually involves like a
Right?
PMS or
Yeah.
Stripe. It usually involves like the PMS or something that's pretty operationally needed, but it's been interesting to see those answers. But Brandy, you and I had the opportunity to sit down with the new owner of B&B Finder and kind of talking about OTAs and distribution. And I know Book Direct, Mark Simpson, who is watching, is probably going to hate me for saying this, but Book Direct is a very talked about topic in our space, and it's I don't know. I love the way Mark and a couple other people approach it, because it's like, hey, there's actually like more than just building a website. Like there's all these things that you can do, and it's a long game. It's not going to be an instant gratification type deal. But I think the way that people are looking at distribution now, and the way new channels like, B&B Finder or whoever else is popping up are able to now actually be a way to prove their seat at the table, where they're not going to get cut because of X, Y, and Z commissions or whatever the structure is. So I'd be curious, especially after our chat with Tim Rosolio from Verbo, had plenty of people come up to me, and I think even you, Brandy, you and I were walking just to go get a caffeine boost, and someone came up and was like, "Oh, I love this episode, X, Y, and Z." So to hear the way people are looking at channels now, it's becoming really interesting, and yeah, I would love to kind of maybe hear your perspectives, Michael, if you have one too. I know you weren't at VRMA, but I think you're definitely heavily involved. So
Well, I had an entire day where I think I met with almost all of our OTA reps on Tuesday. It was literally just like all these different
I know you
meetings.
left me all alone to record.
I
Just
did. I
kidding.
had to go do my main job.
Yeah,
um, but I think, I I'm skeptical sometimes about the new players that come into the space. Not saying that they can't be successful, but how much value are they actually going to provide, and then how do they connect to the PMS that you have? Because I think that can also be like, what channel manager, if they're connected through a channel manager, are they using? Because okay, if I'm not if I'm using Rentals United but I'm not using Booking Pal, and you have to use Booking Pal, do I want to add that, or vice versa? So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And also, I mean, I like having all of these distribution channels, because it starts to, your dependency on one of them starts to fade. And no, you never want to
yeah.
really be super dependent on one OTA for your revenue. So I kind of like having a little bit of distribution. And then it also is, after a couple months, maybe a year, you try one out. And if it's not working, you can cut it. And that's not going to have a crazy impact. And you're also reaching, I think, like we've talked about Amex on here, the
Yeah.
potential for that distribution platform is amazing. You like to reach all these people that just might not even have thought about it before, but this is a cool new way for them to spend their points. I'm very, very excited. I would love to get on there soon. So,
Something that's
no,
already mainstream and actually has a client
yeah.
base. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Brandy, help us understand like your breakdown by channels, if you don't mind. If it
No, not at all. So
and
for
then
us,
even all the way down into the niches like the Marriott Homes and Villas and the
yeah. It's I actually have it pulled up right here. Doug Truitt, our wonderful head of commercial, has built out. We have this like really crazy dashboard database. I look at it like every
Shout out
30
to
minutes,
Doug.
even though it only updates every 2 hours. I'm like, maybe the numbers have changed. um, so tied for first is Airbnb in our direct site. And that was I mean, the rebrand really, really helped. And we've done a lot of work in our direct site. And then booking.com is third. Verbo and the Expedia family are next. And like everybody else now is like kind of equal. And then Marriott. And then there's just like a little sliver of some random ones that we get through.
Marriott,
Is
like
is
5% or something.
Marriott, right, as of today, is 4.5%. So
Okay.
is Hopper Homes all the way at the bottom with 0?
Hopper is lumped into our others category. Um,
Nice.
but so, and that's the interesting thing. Marriott, I mean, even though I say like, basically 5%, that's not a small number. And so we
That's
really like,
great.
and that's why I kind of look to the newcomers like Amex and Hyatt. When Marriott started, we were kind of like, this is, frankly, just kind of like a thing to put on pitch decks. And,
Yeah.
but then, I mean, they've really become a great partner and a significant source of revenue. So that's why I have hope for,
Yep.
some of the newcomers that if they can provide value, I mean, then we love to work with them.
I'm personally, I've just seen too many niche OTAs like pop up and disappear that I'm very skeptical they can survive. I am very positive on the Marriotts and the Amexes and the Hyatts, and then who's next, IHG or Hilton or whoever, Citibank or whatever, insert mega financial
Yeah.
or mega hospitality group. Because they already have the customers, competing with the major OTAs. Just ask Hopper. I mean, they've raised $750 million rather, something like that, and they're really struggling to compete. So
Yeah.
if
It's
you
a
can't,
nasty game.
it's a brutal game. And so I mean, I think niches can play in certain segments, like ultra luxury. Luxury retreats was a nice business until Airbnb bought it and kind of got it lumped back into Airbnb's inventory. But I think broadly speaking, if you can have 5% come from Marriott Homes and Villas and 5% come from Amex and 5% come from, insert future platform on top of the big three and Booking Direct, that's very diversified. You're in a good position. So if you're listening to this and you're getting 100% of your bookings from Airbnb, stop. If you're getting 100% of your bookings direct, also stop, because
Yeah.
that's also not a safe way of doing it. Anything can happen, right? Your site can crash, get hacked, and it'd be a week before you come back on. You can take 0 bookings until then. Like,
Well, we saw that because we had our PMS migration, and then the next thing that we were doing was the rebrand. So we had this kind of like makeshift site. You could still book, but it wasn't as smooth. We lost so much of like the back end SEO work, all our backlink. I mean, it was just kind of, it was bad. And so you saw our direct bookings drop significantly, which we knew was going to happen. So we planned accordingly. But if that was our only source, that would have like crippled the company, So, and I think, I've in my now, I guess, famous Brandy rants about Airbnb, which I've come to accept that is a thing now because several people at the conference came up to me.
I just love how many people at the conference came up to both of us and were just like, I love a good Brandy rant on the podcast, and very inspired for the new shirts that will be coming out in
Oh
the
my
next month or
God.
so. Brandy rant shirts are
I've
on the way, everybody.
I've accepted it. But so we had these issues with Airbnb, which we talked to their team about at the conference. But like that, I mean, Airbnb is, like I said, tied for first with our direct site. So like that has a huge impact on your cash flow and your revenue. And I just, when I hear about operators being so dependent on one OTA, I mean, that's so nerve wracking. You're basically held hostage, and it's your own doing. So you can get out of that situation.
Yeah,
yes.
100%. Well,
All right.
it's great.
Any last highlights that you guys want to cover before we drop?
Well, mine is like, it's not necessarily it's not specific, but I always kind of like wax poetic after these things because I just really love our industry so much. I like, it gives me like the warm fuzzies when I leave. Like I just had with so many great conversations with new people, like new operators, new vendors that I met. We get to see our partners in person. We got to spend time with the wonderful people at TravelNet, and like, they had a big, beautiful booth, and get to actually spend time talking to them and getting to know them and building that relationship. And that's like what I love about all of the kind of the in-between moments at the panel sessions, or between the panel sessions and at the bar and whatever. That's just like, we have so many great people in this industry, so many intelligent people, and I love getting to spend time with them.
Yeah, it was like a big family reunion, of course, getting to see everyone. And I think like the best part floating in the vendor hall and just kind of hearing what the vendors are talking about to operators like Brandy, you just mentioned TravelNet, and not just because they're a sponsor of ours, but hearing them talk to their users and not just being able to like have a solution for the PMS side, but with Atlas and kind of with how they're building in rented. And Michael, you're talking about strong integrations, and it was just really cool to hear how they're really becoming more holistic. I think that's really important. And I got to spend a couple days in Vancouver, Canada, with the Operto team, and kind of hear how their recent acquisitions are now tying into the main Operto platform, and just seeing that like that strong foundation side from the tech is really exciting. I think it's going to continue to get better. Hopefully, like last year, I felt like every new company could have ever popped up, and now this year, I feel like, all right, we're done with new companies. We're ready for the companies that have a stake in the industry to really build out and become bigger and better and more I guess built. So again, very exciting. And quick shout out to Jimmy, who is tuning in live on LinkedIn. He's got a good question. Michael, you have any kind of thoughts, or Brandy, any thoughts on answering
Well,
his
I wasn't at
question
the
Well,
for the
conference.
yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna
I
say.
would say at the conference, I mean, visually, Airbnb had the biggest presence. They had a huge booth and lots of people in pink vests. They weren't on any panels. I don't really know what their lot like. There was an OTA Wars panel that they weren't on, I don't think. I
Yeah.
think that Verbo is definitely trying to be more collaborative. There's a lot of people that had a lot of questions, and they're certainly out there, putting in the FaceTime. So that's great. Booking.com was there. I mean, they're there. They had a big team. Those are just, I mean, obviously, like those are kind of like the big three that you'd expect. But Airbnb is always kind of quiet, which I find to be interesting considering that they are usually a big PR machine.
Interesting. What about of the newcomers? Hopper, Marriott Homes and Villas, Hyatt, Amex, were any of them there in
So,
a
no, so
Homes and
Amex and
villas for
Hyatt
sure.
Homes, yeah, Marriott was there,
Yeah.
but Hyatt and Amex, they didn't. I mean, if they had reps there, they were like incognito, so I don't think they did. They're going through Booking Pal, so that's kind of, I think, their rep there.
Mhm.
Hopper, they sponsored the Wi-Fi, so that was there.
Yeah. Yeah. Had a couple interesting anyways. Yeah, B&B Finder. Again, I think B&B Finder, that was a cool episode to hear Eric's history. So I'm very curious to see how this all plays out for them too, being like the non-commission OTA. Um, I think for me, I want to see this. I want to see it build out. I think I think it's going to come to outlasting, the competition, and not that you're going to outlast Airbnb or Verbo as public companies, but I think you can definitely outlast the onesie twosies who are just trying to put their toe in the water and aren't really making any traction.
Well,
Yep.
it's not a zero-sum game, so, you know, people like to have
5% a lot?
options. Yeah.
Taking any amount of the bookings away from the major ones is a step towards diversification, which is a good one. So
Definitely.
awesome.
One
Well,
actually quick thing, sorry, before we wrap up, that I thought was really positive is just that it was a lot of positive energy. There wasn't a lot of vitriol or negativity. And I think that is always a good thing. It feels very collaborative, very positive, and hopefully that, brings us good things going into a new year.
Yeah,
awesome.
definitely heard a lot of partnership talks, so that was really cool. Um, yeah, sounds
Well,
really good. Go ahead, Michael.
I'm a huge fan of the industry as a whole. To echo what Brandy has said, a little bummed I couldn't make it this year. Hopefully, be back there next year in a slightly better location. Um, but congrats again to Andrew Lynn Josick and the team at Upstay for Sojo's Happy Hour grand prize. Should be great to celebrate your team and your cleaning crew. Um, Treat them well, and appreciate Sojo putting that together.
Definitely. And it's great to see you too, as always. And for all of our live viewers, thank you for tuning in and engaging with the conversation. It's good to see some familiar faces and some that we haven't fully met yet. Shout out to Jeremy again out in Israel. We are always thinking of you and hope you guys are doing okay out there. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everyone again next week.